About a year ago, I was introduced to True Niagen, a supplement specifically designed to boost a key cellular resource called NAD. That's short for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And I was really impressed with the research that showed that increased NAD levels can promote cellular repair, maintain healthy mitochondria, and increase energy throughout the trillions of cells in our body. I've been taking True Niagen ever since, and I am truly persuaded, which is why I'm so excited to welcome them back to the program. Let's get into how True Niagen works. From age 40 to 60, humans can experience a 50% decline in NAD, leaving our cells with a shortage of that incredibly valuable energy resource. Additionally, things like immune stress, poor diet, even alcohol consumption can all deplete our cell NAD levels. Research suggests that increased NAD can support cellular defense against these physiological stressors. True Niagen is designed to boost NAD levels and is backed by clinical research and regulatory approvals. Now, while the research is still evolving, I am truly impressed by the possibilities surrounding NAD and the research behind True Niagen. And I suggest you check out their information for yourself. To learn more about the research, science, and to order your supply of True Niagen supplement, visit drdrew.com/TrueNiagen and use the code DREW at checkout for a special discount on orders of 3 bottles or more. So that's my website, drdrew.com/TRUNIAGEN, and use the code DREW today.
Hey, everyone. It's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Hey, everybody. How am I typing and talking? I wasn't talking. Now I'm talking. Susan, I think you ought to do both those in the middle here.
I just did one.
So here we are. We're going to have the great Daniel Baldwin in here any minute. Let me see if he has called in yet. Oh, I think that's him. Is he anonymous?
Yes, he is.
Well, let me get right. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to review on COVID today, just some speculation. But I want to bring in Daniel Baldwin, the one and only. Daniel, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Thank you for coming on our stream. And thank you for having me on your podcast this morning. Just tell people where they can find that.
That's Diet-Free Life and the Stay Healthy Experience with Robert Ferguson and Barbara Chris. Very exciting stuff. I think we're going to probably talk a little bit, you and I, today about my journey this last year. Has been pretty interesting.
Crazy. I saw the video of you running with the bulls, and what the thought bubble over my head was, did Robert help you with that?
Yes. So what happened was I had a guy, as you know, from our years of experience of my trying to battle the demons with my own addiction. And finally, since November 22nd, 2006, I'm sober. And as part of what I looked at, the things that I didn't do in my previous, 50 attempts at getting sober. And one of them was really prevalent for me was the service model. I was above making coffee. I was above doing chairs. Don't you know who I am? Blah, blah, all that nonsense. When really I was an alcoholic drug addict who needed to get sober, needed help. And so when I finally humbled myself and started doing the things that I was told to do by far greater minds of my own and people that had what I wanted, which was sobriety, I started making myself available. And then, of course, that grew as I got time into, going as far as getting on airplanes and showing up in people's living rooms and doing interventions, getting on the plane with the subject and taking them to rehab, all, without any charge. I did, most of the time did that, and it came out of my own pocket. In that adventure, my brother Alex's first girlfriend in junior high school, Barbara Jean Constantino, who lived around the block from us, saw that I put it out there in a very public way on Facebook and said, if you need help, please private message me and so on. And her son, PJ, who I knew since he was born, was struggling with this terrible opiate epidemic that we have in our country right now. And so it was the usual story, Drew. I made a deal with the DA. He was facing charges. I put him in once. He got out. He wouldn't go to meetings. He wouldn't do, and he failed. And then I put him in again. He failed. I put him in a third time. So finally, I had to fly to Wilmington because the judge was done. And I met with the judge and I met with the DA. And I said, look, let me have one more shot with him. He's a nonviolent, non-sexual offender. And he's going to end up going to prison on this path that he's on. So do you want to spend $75,000 a year, one or two more charges from now and put him away? Or do you want me to take another shot at him? So he said he had to finish this program in Malibu. He had to stay in for 2 years to avoid 10 years in prison.
Wow.
So
Which program was
on that trip.
Hang
Yeah.
on. We may be having a technical
Sober.
glitch here. I'm gonna
No,
give
I
you.
think it's okay.
Okay. So where was that? 2 years. My goodness. So
So I
was
put-
that the SOBA
Remember
treatment?
Greg Hansen, sober treatment?
Yeah. Okay. Got
So I
it.
put him into sober because that's where I graduated from. And on the trip, we arrived on a very late flight. So I had him come to my house, and I asked him to write me a list of the 10 things, a bucket list, if you will, that he always wanted to do, that if he ended up in prison or he ended up ODing, he would never get to do. And so he wrote his list, and it was late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I went upstairs and found the list I wrote when I was in rehab with Bob Timmons. Do you remember Bob?
Oh, I know Bob. Love Bob.
So Bob had me write a list. And I love Bob. And so we had one match on our bucket list, and that was to run with the Bulls in Pamplona, Spain. So I told him if he completed the program and stayed sober for 2 years, I would take him and I would run with the Bulls with him. Well, he got 3.5 years sober. He was actually working at a rehab in their sober living. He met some girl online.
Oh boy.
The story goes that she took the needle out. It was laced with fentanyl. First shot after 3.5 years, he ODs and he dies. And I lost him.
Oh boy.
So it was an 8-year battle going back and forth with him. And I got to tell you, I know you of all people, you, Greg, and some of the people I know that have been around this for decades. I got to tell you, this was the hardest one for me, Drew.
I understand. I understand. Listen, the obsession around the opiates is the most profound. And I have a couple of friends. They had a podcast called the Dopey Podcast. And one of the partners of that podcast was a guy I treated years ago. And he was a terrible drug addict. And now he was sober, going to get his PsyD. The kind of people that inspire me and keep me going from day to day. And then one day he started BSing a little bit. A week later, found in his car.
About a month after you did a podcast.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me. I met PJ like a month before he died too. Isn't that weird?
It's just
I
it's
met
just
him
the,
when
it's
he
just
was
the
on my
the opiates.
podcast.
And then you layer on to how pernicious the opiate addiction is, the fact that we went through about a 15-year period where medicine perpetrated this disorder. We perpetrated this catastrophe. Now that we've got that somewhat under control, now we've got fentanyl. It's just beyond. It's just beyond.
And they'll come up with something else next that will be 50 times stronger than fentanyl, and we'll lose even more of them. The interesting thing is the perception, and I, as much as my honoring my promise to PJ. So let me just tell you what happened.
Yeah. So you're talking about Robert.
So 2 years went by. 2 years went by of his death, and I started identifying some of the emotions and some of the things that I was going through, and one of them was I was really angry, and I didn't realize how angry I was. I was sad, I was hurt, but I was angry about it. And so coinciding with a physical that I did, and my doctor looked at me, this wonderful Asian woman says to me, she says, Dan, do you know how much you weigh right now? And I didn't even pay attention. I got on one of those digital scales. The numbers were on the bottom, and I didn't even look. And she said, you weigh 285 pounds. You're 32 pounds heavier than you were last year, and you're a type 2 diabetic. So I don't like the trend that you're on right now. I think you're in trouble.
Oh my God! So, did you say 285?
285.
Dude, that's 15 pounds. That's 15 pounds from 3 bells.
I know.
That's I didn't know that was happening to you. I'm sorry I missed that. I would have. I feel like a bad friend.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead, keep going.
She draws the blood. She calls me in 3 days later, and I said, how did I do? She goes, I'd like you to see you in my office. So I know when she says that, it's bad. So my triglycerides were 3,100. And she said, I'd like to check your sugar. Now, I don't know. I'm a diabetic at the time. She checked my sugar, and she said, go next door and ask them if you can borrow their meter. This can't be right. So they checked my sugar again. Take a guess.
Whoop, you there?
Yeah. Did you hear what I said?
They checked it again, and what happened?
Take a guess.
Oh, take a guess. How much?
I said take it.
Were
Take a guess.
Were they? Well, it depends what else they were worried about. It's 310.
They're checking my sugar for diabetes,
Yeah.
and she suspects I'm a diabetic, and I don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
So take a guess. Go big.
Well, see, if you get above 400, you get something called hyperosmolar situation when you're a type 2. So I'm going to guess it's under 400, but not above 300.
They admit me in the hospital immediately. I was 690.
So that's how you get into. Were you confused, or were you having trouble concentrating, or anything? Blurry vision, anything?
I was seeing white spots. My vision was very screwed up.
Okay.
I couldn't read anything.
Yeah.
I was urinating, 7 times an hour, and I didn't realize why. I thought I had to flush my kidneys, so I started drinking cranberry juice and stuff for like a week.
Perfect. More
More
sugar. More sugar. Awesome.
Yeah, more sugar. I know. It just made it worse. So I don't know anything about it. I've now gone through the honeymoon phase. I'm a full-blown type 2 diabetic. They admit me into the hospital.
Wow.
They start treating me for it, and they bring me down. And I get out on February 7th of 2019, and I said, okay. I called Robert Ferguson, who is the creator of this program called Diet Free Life, and I said, I'm in trouble, and I've decided that I am going to go in July and run with the Bulls. So I need to lose as much weight responsibly as I can and try to bring my sugar down as much as I can. I remember you telling me that not only did your diet program help people lose weight, but it had a really profound effect on people that have diabetes.
How did you hear about it? How did you find out about Robert?
I knew Robert through Greg Hanley from SOBA, but I also knew him from the fight game. He had trained Antonio Vargas to a title and a lot of guys. So I knew of him and I knew about him. And he was an MMA fighter himself.
Oh, no kidding.
So anyway, I went to meet him. Pardon me?
I didn't know that he was a fighter. Interesting. Keep going.
Oh yeah, he fought back with Chuck Liddell, and he trained with Chuck, and he trained with Tito Ortiz, and yeah, he's a big fighter. So I go on this diet. It's pretty simple kind of thing. It's a fast burning carb, a slow burning carb, or protein. You keep it in balance with you size your meal off the size of your own hand, because that should give a good idea of how much portion wise, rather than measuring it. He makes it very simple. Well, I was on the needle for the diabetes, and they had me shooting twice a day. Within 2 months, I went down from metformin and insulin twice to insulin once. Then I got off within 4 months. My sugar came down so much from the diet. I was very strict on the diet.
Good.
I went from 285 to 228.
Wow.
From February 7th to July 7th. So in 5 months, I lost 57 pounds on the diet.
Good for you.
And I flew to Barcelona. I drove to Pamplona, and with 10 cameras running on the field, I ran with PJ's ashes, and I spewed his ashes in the stadium during the running with the Bulls.
That's so sweet.
And so I fulfilled the promise as best I could. I documented all of it, the weight loss, the training, along with several interviews with his family, and the only time ever in a film that myself and my 3 brothers are in the same movie, because we all knew PJ and his family. And I documented everything, and I'm cutting it down now from, I think I have 60 hours on 3 cameras, so 180 hours worth of stuff, which I have to trim down now to, under 2, which is like just ridiculously hard to do.
So what I saw was I saw the sizzle.
So
the sizzle for the
go ahead,
I saw the sizzle for the documentary. What I've seen, right?
Yes, you saw the sizzle. Yeah. Yeah. So then with Robert's company got bought by Stay Healthy, this company that's all about trying to help people with cancer and with their diet, and he became the dietary portion, the nutritional portion of it. And then I went with him kind of in a spokesperson role. And that's why I know those guys, and that's why I do that podcast.
Your Alec, your brother mentioned, he started talking about codependency in there. I thought that was interesting because I've never heard him speak about that before. And
yeah,
did that topic or his perception on this being kind of a codependency. And what he was saying was you develop the codependent relationship and then somebody dies. Now what do you do?
Right. The interesting thing, a lot of people at the top of this show, I didn't finish the thought. I got sidetracked. And that was, so many people in that same step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, we reach out to the alcoholic or addict that still suffers. Well, this, although a lot of people have said to me, wow, what a great thing that you did this for PJ. Make no mistake about it. I did this initially for me. Although if the fallout of it is that it helps an addict or it helps a mom or a dad, because it's a very unnatural occurrence that you bury your child. That's not supposed to happen.
Right.
And so, there is that element of it in there. But there was a very interesting exploration for me in the interviews with my brothers, because it didn't become about PJ. It became about what they went through watching me for 25 years.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
So in that moment,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, Alex was very somebody who had more time, somebody who was trying to explain himself about. I remember saying to him, and it's in the movie. I said, there was a time where I was so angry with you and I hated you, and I thought, what an asshole this guy is. He lives right down the block with Kim in Woodland Hills, and I live in Sherman Oaks. And he barely ever, I had not one time in the years we were together was I ever invited to their home. And I remember saying to him, I go, do you know how that made me feel? That like you'd come by and we'd go to an occasional AA meeting or we play tennis or something, but that I never got invited into your home. And he looked at me and he went, you were smoking cocaine. I didn't have people that did cocaine come to my house. He goes, I'm sober. And I remember in that moment thinking, wow, he was able to put his sobriety ahead of even his relationship with his brother who he loved. And I was never strong enough at that time to do that. And it was really profound for me. All that stuff went right out the window. And I thought it was his sobriety. He was putting his sobriety first, which is what we're taught to do. And I really understood because I had enough time to really appreciate what he was going through and how much pain that must have been for him. So a lot of really cathartic things came out in the family element. Listening to my brother Billy's interviews, it was in the editing room were painful because he was so angry. He told such terrible stories about, he just kept going back to another story of how just sick he was over what a slob I was being and what a this. And I remember watching him wincing when because I would start to remember the story he was going to tell. And I go, oh, God, he's going to tell that story.
So he doesn't have the gene. He doesn't get it. Really?
He's not in the program. He's the only one. Steven's sober.
Yeah.
Beth and Jane both have been in OA for eating disorders. My mother was in OA. Billy's the only one that kind of somehow, didn't catch the disease. And so he just doesn't get it at all.
Right.
Didn't get it.
He sounds like just
25
classic.
25 years later.
Yeah, classic codependency. Classic. I'm angry with you that you behave like that. And
and 25 years later, he's quoting stories 30 years ago, and I'm looking at him going, wow, how'd that feel to get that off your chest?
No, exactly. Hey, there's some callers calling in and want to ask some questions. Let's interact with some of these guys, see what they've got on deck for us. Stacy, go ahead. Stacy.
Hi, Dr. Drew. I've been wanting to talk to you forever.
Here we are.
Well, not forever, but since the coronavirus, I've really become addicted to your show or your podcast. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on complex post-traumatic stress disorder and scapegoating within families, how that impacts adults and their sobriety or their substance abuse, and how do you put all of that behind you in order to get sober?
All right, so I'm going to put you on mute while Daniel and I talk about this, because this is a huge question, a massive question. So let's just frame it as trauma is sort of the rocket fuel behind a lot of addiction. If, in other words, if you have bad enough addiction that you need to see me, you had childhood trauma. And trauma at its core is shattering of the brain's ability to build its own capacity to regulate. So you end up reaching outside of yourself to regulate. You find substances, and then you trigger a second problem. We call that drug addiction. And, which you treat, in what order and how you treat, this is sort of the art a little bit of all this. But I'm gonna ask you, Daniel, you had talked about how you were in therapy for a long period of time and how important that was to you to finally really getting it.
Well, I will say that although it's nowhere near as extensive or in depth as yours, as a crisis interventionist, I will say that I would be willing to bet that probably that's a good number, 90% or more of all addiction is a byproduct of an underlying issue. And so, with that said, by treating and going to rehab and the 28 days typical insurance stay, is nowhere near long enough to go in and get to trust someone well enough to start to really share what's going on. And remember, when you start to tear that up and you start to throw that up in the air and talk about it, it's going to bring up a lot of feelings and a lot of very, very deep emotions. So being in a program in safe walls, in a safe place to digest all of that, and it takes time. So if you don't get to the bottom of it and start to process it to a point where you're pretty comfortable with it, then you're probably going to end up relapsing again because of how you feel about bringing it all up again. And without getting to the bottom of it, you will probably never be at rest. So that's why the therapy portion of it, I think, is probably the most. We arrest it with detoxing you, and then we try to stabilize you and get some of the stuff rolling in the 28 days that you're in the rehab.
Right.
But that's why PHP, sober living, continued care,
Right.
For 6 months, a year, and then going on to that therapist afterwards is so important to do, because all that stuff that you're feeling is waiting for you at the door when you walk out.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest reason why you ended up going to some type of chemical or alcohol,
Right.
to subdue, those feelings.
But now you've got the disease clinging to all that and pushing you back towards using. So not only are you with what you started with that caused you to reach outside of your body to regulate what was going on inside, but now you have an illness going, well, that's the right thing to do. Come on, let's do that again. Or however the stinking thinking sort of comes through. Your disease takes advantage of everything about you, everything positive, everything negative. Your disease takes it and uses it as a motivation to use. Crazy.
Absolutely. Well, we're not talking about the healing of a cut. So you get a deep gash in your arm, and then we clean it out. We do the surgery. We, whatever you got to do. And then we sew it all up and we wait for that thing to heal. Well, this trauma that we're talking about, let's use a hypothetical. So it's a female, patient, and she's been raped.
Right.
That's never going to go away.
Right.
That's always going to be there. It's how you process it,
Right.
and how you react to it that we need to work on. It is what it is. It's there, and it's a sad and you are a victim, and but what you do with it and how you allow that to fuel you and motivate you is what needs to be worked on.
And it literally is about tolerating intolerable doses, accessing it, and then regulating it. Really, we're talking about wiring the brain. And as you wire up, your perspective changes. You start looking at what happens differently. You're literally looking at it from a different place. But that, again, takes a lot of time. Stacy, when you say scapegoating, what are you talking about?
When you have a narcissist parent or a borderline personality disorder parent that is manipulative and will isolate one child or another,
Right.
where you're the one that's wrong,
Okay,
because
so-
that's the child that will say, "Hey, this is wrong,"
Right, I
and you're
get
like,
it.
"No,
No,
you're the one that's wrong."
But you need to know
and
that
they constantly shame you, et
I get
cetera,
it.
et cetera.
I get it. And you're right. That is a personality disorder. But it also, scapegoating is also, single scapegoat is also a feature of an alcoholic family. So somebody's the hero, somebody's the scapegoat, somebody's the rescuer. Is this an alcoholic family system?
Yes.
Yeah. So that kind of goes with that. Read about alcoholic families. I think you'll come to understand that that's kind of how things kind of typically break down. Oh boy, Stacy, it takes time. Hang with it. Hang with it, my dear. It's just what would you tell a Stacy who's struggling? Let's say it's a bad day for Stacy and her disease is calling to her. How do you get her through it?
Well, and so what I'm unclear about in the call is Stacy the alcoholic, or is there an alcoholic in her family?
She comes from an alcoholic family. Right.
Well, we don't have to.
I can ask.
I would say to anybody if they're not.
Are you recovering, Stacy?
I'm trying, but I keep relapsing.
Right.
I was supposed to go into a program right before the coronavirus hit, and then the partial hospitalization program I was set to go in closed, and I've been struggling.
Oh, I get it.
There's no meetings.
Yep. So that's what I was feeling, Daniel. Is that the Stacy was struggling, and of course, and it's very, very, very common right now. So what would you say? I have my own little sort of reserve. It depends on the case, but what would you say to Stacy?
Well, one thing I want to say to Stacy is the opportunity that she has, and sometimes your kids will be the motivation behind you, your job, whatever it is, your personal relationship with God, so whatever it is that you can tap into that will motivate you, because it sounds like Stacy's been around the program.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that this is not her first try at this.
Yep.
And so, but remember something else. As you point out to Dr. Drew and myself, all of these different things that are going on in your family, you have an opportunity to be the leader now. By you getting sober, by you applying yourself to this program that you already know what you need to do. And so by you applying yourself, you have the opportunity to lead this family to a place that they've never been before. And I would take that opportunity, because by you calling, you're asking these questions and you care. And so it's sad to see if there's multiple alcoholics, or if you're the point of the alcoholism in the family, the tip of the spear, if you will. But you can lead them into a much better place. And I think because you care, that might be something you might want to look at.
And the reason Daniel and I both feel like you've been around the program is that when somebody that looks at what their condition goes, I need some partial hospitalization, I'd like to go. So that's somebody who knows what they need with their illness. And so congratulations in that. Somebody early in the game usually is like, I don't want to do that. Maybe I'll go to evening treatment. You know what I mean? We're sort of so used to that. But the other thing, the other thing though, Daniel, and this is the part that I'm going to ask you to speak to, and you and I talked a little bit about this morning on the Stay Healthy experience, which is that for you, getting a spiritual program made a huge difference. And I also feel like this is going to sound, weird. First of all, she might benefit from medical management. She might benefit from seeing a psychiatrist. She might, medical assisted treatment could be helpful for this lady, particularly with all the shutdown of everything that's out there. So let me put that out there. But in terms of having a spiritual program, sometimes getting on your knees can kind of be that moment that turns you around. Speak to that, Daniel.
Well, there's one of the things that opens the doors to everyone is that it says a higher power. At least the 12-step program that I subscribe to, it talks about having a higher power. But He, God, higher power, Him are referred to, I believe, 9 times in 12 steps. So it obviously is something that's very, very important in a 12-step program. I think having a place to go and not taking on all that responsibility yourself is a big component of that. For me, Jesus Christ is my personal savior. I'm a Christian, so I go to Jesus with it. And when I realize that, I'm in the cockpit, I'm in the airplane, and my grip used to be so tight. I come from a place as a child of sexual abuse, of physical abuse, none of which I had any role in it all. I was absolutely a victim in it. But it wasn't until in my 30s that I started to recall what really went on and what happened to me. And when I started really getting, a very clear look at who was involved and what had happened and everything, I went right to cocaine. I wanted to escape from it. It wasn't until I realized that my flying the plane, we never landed once properly. I mean, there were varying degrees of crashing that went on right up, to near the end where I was slamming it into, the ground and every passenger was dying. I'm not the pilot. When I decided that I wanted to sit in the co-pilot seat and let God fly the plane for me, I no longer worried about many, many things. I realized that I was not the one, and that what happened in my life, I did not determine that I was going to follow those signs and the things that were very obvious to me and things that were very, very simple to me. The coronavirus is a great thing we talked about earlier today. I looked at the coronavirus, and although I'm very sad, I have friends that have lost multiple now members of their family, a mother and a brother, one friend of mine, Tom. And it's a terrible thing. But the opportunity for me to get closer to my children, for me to have a greater appreciation of stay-home mothers, for me to have a greater appreciation and be thankful for school teachers, for me to be able to give to some people that are struggling with their sobriety. So I'm on Zoom and I'm on the phone all day and I'm speaking at meetings 1,000 miles away because someone knows that I speak. I've turned it into the best possible scenario that I can and take a look at the opportunities that have been afforded me because I'm not working. I'm staying home as a stay-home dad with my children. It's a matter of perspective, so I always try to find the glass and how much water is in it and get it over half full every time if I can. And that's just a choice that I make in my life. And that comes from my belief in God.
That is great. And again, you mentioned the Zoom meeting. Please, Stacy, take advantage there. Both Daniel and I have found that while people didn't like them at first, they're doing them all day and really kind of like them, and they're finding them very, very helpful. They're not quite the same as an in-person meeting, but they are helpful. The other thing, Daniel, you mentioned, just there is about being the pilot of these ships. That is the one thing that I think, when people start to fight the higher power concept, I said, look, all I'm trying to do is have you let go. Just let go. Run the flag up. Just run the surrender flag up. But people won't do that unless they have a concept of something higher than themselves. They just won't do it. And the way my patients sometimes describe themselves is a piece of shit around which the whole world revolves. So they're busy controlling the world and feeling bad about themselves and the world at the same time. And that's a horrible position to be in.
Oh, it's a lonely place. Little by little, the people around you. I just put a guy, he decided to go to a program that it was quite interesting. He went to this program once before. He didn't stay sober for 10 days after spending, $70,000, a month or some nonsense, one of these big plush places out in Malibu. And he said, well, the reason why I like to go is because I don't really like those 12-step meetings. They don't really talk about God or higher power that much. And you get to sit with your counselor and you make out your program. So if I want to work out at 10 in the morning, I can do 10 in the morning. I can do a group. So you're calling all your own shots. And it's like a menu, and you pick out what you want to do. And then you get a massage. And, and I said to him, I go, bro, I why don't you just go on vacation?
Right, exactly.
While you're spending all that money, you could go to the Bahamas, and get a suite in a hotel for $20,000 for the month.
Yeah, right.
Where are you going? What are they teaching you? But it's interesting because he wants that control. He's going to pick his program. Listen, if you were so good at it, you wouldn't be going to rehab, and you wouldn't be in trouble with the law, and you wouldn't be losing your family and your job. So, your way sucks. I mean, my way was terrible. Yeah. And the amount of time, I always take that Libra scale, and I say, in the beginning, the first time I ever smoked cocaine, I had one of the greatest nights in my life. I can still remember every day. And it was, even then, the next morning, I felt really lethargic and tired because I had stayed up all night and wake up. So it was 98% really amazing and 2%. Then it got 90-10, then it got 80-20, then it got 60-40. And by the time I was done, the amount of time I had to spend lying to people, covering myself, to disappear in a hotel room down in Marina Del Rey for 3 weeks without returning a phone call. And then by the time I come up for air, credit cards from business managers were canceled, wives were becoming ex-wives, children hadn't seen their father in a month. that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
And yet I couldn't let go. I couldn't let go of the control.
And it gets, the more ashamed and guilty you feel, the worse, the more you cling. Well, Daniel, listen, my friend, you remain an inspiration to me, and it's just great to talk to you. One of the greatest days of my life was when I ran into you in a hotel in New York City. I love that. And go
and that hotel's closed.
I know.
So
Go
sad.
Syracuse. Are you still doing that broadcast?
No, I had to. It took me a year. It was 5 months of intensive training, and then the running with the Bulls, and then all the interviews and everything I did after I ran with the Bulls. So that was another 4 months to get all the interviews done. And now I'm editing the film. So I did a couple of little movies for like a week each just to be able to keep the lights on. But it's been a year. February 7th was a year I've been on. So now it's a year, and it's going to take me 18 months to finish this project.
Well, I'm just so glad that your health has benefited from it. So I'm deeply grateful for that. Again, tell people where they can find the podcast.
The Stay Healthy Experience.
Just wherever you get your podcast.
Stay Healthy Experience and dietfreelife.com if you want to learn about how I got the diabetes under control and how I lost all the weight.
Can you say that again?
Dietfreelife.com.
All right, my friend. I'm going to let you go, and we'll talk soon, no doubt.
All right, brother.
Thanks, Daniel. See you.
Okay, man. God bless you guys.
You bet. Thank you, buddy. Okay, let's talk a little coronavirus here before we get too far downstream, so to speak.
Sorry,
I'm looking at your thing here. No specific questions for you guys. So I spoke to Dr. Charles Murray last night. He is the guy that builds the models for the University of Washington. And I asked him the question that I ask every expert I come in contact with. And I said, look, you've got all these new assumptions about movement adversely affecting the transmission of this virus. If you look at the new data, you can see he has this graph at the top of the page called social distancing. And he shows travel and your mobility, what your mobility is based on the lockdown versus not. And I said, why are you assuming that once we begin to move about, if we continue to maintain mask use, hand washing, and proper social distancing, why are you assuming there'll be increased transition? And he went, and he answered the same way every expert that I've asked this question of answers, which is, that's a great question. And what he means by being a great question is there's no science that shows this. Now, what he told me was, well, in the past, when people move about, we start seeing increased spread. The past is not today. We've never been through anything like this. People have never been more freaked out. They've never been more schooled on social distancing. Go outside and tell me if you don't see people standing away from each other and wearing masks and washing their hands. That is not mobility in the sense of what we used to see when people are free from quarantine. So this is a wholly different situation, and I believe that these assumptions may be wrong. He also said that the reason they don't have the data out yet is there's some sort of, what should we call it? Something about the data that's not passing muster right now. And I'm looking at California infection and testing. And I also asked, where did you come up with this presumed estimated infection data? Well, it was extrapolated back from the deaths per day. It's like, well, that's a high degree of assumption, tremendous assumptions being made, that we have 5 times the number of estimated infections as compared to documented infections. So I'm gravely concerned about these models. These are models that we've all relied on here, that we've been all talking about this whole time. But I am concerned that it's going to be off for a little while. I asked him about Georgia, and I said, look, Georgia should be the canary in the coal mine, right? If Georgia really picked the wrong moment to free everybody up, to start moving about, we should see a quick tick up in the cases. And he agreed. However, he said you wouldn't see the deaths for a few days. So I'm now, and he did not put out his graphs yet. Let me double check that because he didn't have it out last time I looked. So Georgia, let's see if any Georgia material is out yet. No, the Georgia graphs are not out yet. And he has a giant confidence interval that's way bigger than his usual, even though the graph he has presented suggests a flattening, much like in Sweden. So there's no peak estimated in the data that he's presented thus far. So we'll see if that has changed in some way with time. So I sort of feel like we're back in the fog of war a little bit. I feel like we are again having difficulty figuring out what our assumption should be about what this thing is. I want to share with you a story about Neil Ferguson, who is somebody Elon Musk called a, quote, utter tool. Dr. Ferguson was the Imperial College modeler that I was complaining about. I was not complaining about him. I was complaining that the New York Times insisted on putting this model on the front page well into the run of this pandemic, where it was clear it was grotesquely inaccurate. Well, he predicted in Sweden that they would have 40,000 deaths by May 1st. They've had 2,800. He predicted 2 million American deaths. That's not true, or about 70,000. He predicted in previous epidemics that in 2002, 50,000 people would die from mad cow disease in the UK alone, where there were 177 deaths from a mad cow. In 2005, he predicted 150 million killed from bird flu. Apparently only 282 died between 2003 and 2009. In 2009, he said that a reasonable worst-case scenario was for the swine flu that there would be 65,000 UK deaths. Again, swine flu was a pretty deadly flu around the world. There was only about 500 in the UK. Let's see, what else this man has been off by orders of magnitude repeatedly. And let's see, the COVID-19 apparently, let me read you this. He admitted that the Imperial College model for COVID-19 was based on an undocumented 13-year-old computer code that was intended to be used for influenza pandemics rather than coronavirus. And now he has been asked to resign from the Imperial College of London because he broke the quarantine that he demanded to have an affair with a married woman. Let me read you the headline. He resigns, okay. He demanded the social distancing and shutdown. He predicted 500,000 deaths in the UK. And let's see what he exactly did. He had violated lockdown rules that he championed. I'm reading this in order to conduct an affair with a married woman. Great. So this is the modeler so if you understand why I like to assess the models and not just to take them on face value, this is just concerning. That's all I'm saying. So there you go. And by the way, I do believe that Dr. Murray is Charles Murray is a consummate professional at University of Washington. I believe that these are the guys that we should be relying on, but even they can make a couple stumbles. And I think their stumble is essentially to be fighting the previous war during this war. In other words, they're looking at data of people moving about during previous pandemics or previous outbreaks versus now. Things are different. They are different. We are different. We are changed by this thing. And I really think that's a big piece of the assumptions that they are getting wrong. So when he makes the models, I'll be sure to share with you here. Wait a minute. Is this a change? No. I'll be sure to share with you, hopefully tomorrow. He told me last night he was going to put up the changes today, but that there was some issue that it wasn't passing in terms of the assumptions, which is what I'm complaining about. So his own models spoke to him and said, I'm not sure you're doing this right. I'm looking at California again. No, still no update. The last update from his models was on May 1st. Obviously, that is far longer ago than his usual interval, which is like 4 or 5 days. Okay.
Do you know who Judy Mikovits is?
Yeah, okay.
I get a lot of emails.
All right, so that's the Plandemic video. I'm going to call that mostly BS. She had some There was some interesting observations in there that she made. There was some truth in that little documentary, and there was a lot of BS, a lot. I mean, just in terms of her mind reading about what Dr. Fauci was doing in terms of managing the rollout of HIV drugs, she had no business. She was not at that level of decision making to even begin to understand what the forces were he was contending with to make the decisions he did. I was around then. I was deeply engaged in the AIDS epidemic. He was my shining light then, which is why I knew he could be a shining light for us all now. Now, I also said he's very conservative, but he will get us out with the least amount of damage. Yeah. Okay. So Todd, you're saying 60% of cases were infected at home. So yeah. So he also said, we're talking about what Governor Cuomo said this morning. The other thing he said this morning is that if you live in Westchester County and you were locked down at home, you had about a 16% chance of getting this thing. If you were a frontline hospital worker in a COVID unit, you had only a 6% chance of getting it. So think about that. That means that proper hand washing and mask technique is superior to being locked down at home, even when you're in the presence of the virus all day in, day out. That to me was the first piece of evidence I've seen. That's the first piece of evidence I've seen that lockdown may not be the most advantageous way to deal with this. Or at very least, once we move about, if we practice proper mask and hand washing, we might be in pretty good shape. So, all right. Yeah, I saw that, Iona. Again, that's all inferential data. I don't want to get into it.
Oh.
Don't be careful. Just there was a lot of inference and association predicting causation. That is not how you do that. That's not necessarily causational. And by the way, it's reasoning from conclusion. This is not how science is conducted. And you should be aware. You should really educate yourself on cognitive distortions. There's a ton of motivated reasoning and reasoning from conclusion going on every day, particularly in the press. So by reasoning from conclusion, you say, here's the outcome I want. I'm going to figure out how we got there, how we need to get there, how we do get there, how I got there. Versus motivated reasoning, which is I know what outcome I want, and I'm going to kind of ignore the stuff that maybe doesn't get me to the outcome that I want. All of that is anathema to science. But as you see, even the modelers, they I don't think they're using biased thinking. I just think they've made some incorrect assumptions. And so you can see, even doing good science, you can make some bad assumptions. So that's why we have to do it and redo it and redo it and reconsider where we are. And I know the University of Washington guys will do that. So I don't want to be critical of them. I'm just being circumspect about the data that's coming out right now. So, and I knew the Neil Ferguson data was a joke from the beginning because we wouldn't let that. Just no way we would allow that to happen. It's just no way. All right, let me get back to your restream.
Some people don't like your opinions.
Which one?
I don't know. Just being.
Well, take them on. Please let's hear. I don't see them here for some reason. Please read them to me.
Also, the same person wants to send a link. Go to drdew.com/contact. You can email us links and just mention that you were.
Steve, what about Farr's Law? I don't see. Let me see. Maybe it's up higher. I always like to have my positions. That's how you refine your positions. You
I'm
have them
proud
challenged.
of you. I'm glad you have some positions today.
Well, it's just it's not something.
Not that I didn't hear them before, but I do like you.
Why is it difficult to accurately predict the COVID epidemic? Because models don't actually predict the future. They just kind of tell you where you are in the direction you're going. They are never, well, I don't want to say never, rarely super accurate in the way we want them to be when we're in the middle of something like this. So, Susan, I'm not seeing anybody taking anything on. Yes, Joan, I do trust Fauci 100%. I've been around his work since 1983. What's that, 40 years? And I have no reason to doubt his judgment. But I will tell you, he is conservative. I mean, we were off by a factor of 100 during the AIDS epidemic, and we congratulated ourselves for that. So we always feel better being conservative. So, Oh, no, I'm not saying you can't be questioned. And nor am I saying that I can't be questioned. I wish you
Right.
would question me. Susan, can you tell me what where that was?
First he wanted to. There's a journal is infectious disease
Yeah.
modeling title. Why
Yeah.
is it difficult to accurately predict the COVID-19?
I just answered that one.
Okay.
I just answered that one.
All right. And
Right.
then the same guy said he didn't like what you were saying.
Okay. Just didn't like what I said about the University of Washington, or what I
You
didn't
seem
say?
to want to be psychic.
I want to be psychic?
You don't know. People will misinterpret your speculation. Most of your viewers aren't trained to think of with scientific degrees of uncertainty.
I'm not sure what you're saying. All I'm saying is I have an issue with the assumptions that were put into the models at the University of Washington. I think we're going to find that the assumptions may be wrong. The assumptions about mobility that they took, that Dr. Murray explained to me last night, I think they're off. I think they're on. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I'm predicting the future. And then I was quoting.
He's a little psychic, though, I have to say.
And then I was quoting Governor Cuomo and his data on staying at home versus being on a COVID ward. So, that's all I was doing. And if you heard me say something else, please tell me, because you fact check me on anything I say.
Sure, why not?
Why don't we die of cytokine storm when we get bronchitis? Because we don't have cytokine storms. Well, I actually believe that people that do poorly with viruses may actually be getting a cytokine storm. We just didn't know to look for it. And now that we've seen these uncontrolled cytokine storms with this virus in risk populations, we know that that's now how that works in an issue. And there's, by the way, very exciting data coming out. We heard about on this stream yesterday of the CCR5 inhibitors. Really good biology. I don't know why they're not waiting for the peer review to really come out with it. They're coming out a little prematurely, but I think that might be another way of hitting this cytokine storm. How did you ever go, Dr. Erickson? He wanted to compare things that I don't think were fair comparisons. I'm sympathetic to what he was saying, but he was making some errors in how he's interpreting his own data. And he did say that his main purpose was just reporting what he had seen. So he wasn't claiming that his data was definitive or in any way authoritative. He was just saying, he was asked by the local news outlets, what data are you seeing? They'd collected some, and he just wanted to report on that. All right, I think we got to kind of wrap things up. Is there, Susan, anything else you want? Lyme disease.
Nobody called. I'm shocked.
That's okay. I really had enough. Stacy was a challenging enough call. I hope she helped.
She's still on the line.
I hope that helped her out a little bit. And I wanted to get to these.
She stayed on. She's still on there.
I wanted to get to these stream.
Hi, Stacy.
These streaming questions, because there was a lot of chatter in here in this restream at the beginning that you wanted some COVID stuff. So I wanted to get to my new thoughts.
No, I'm glad you talked about it. It's very cathartic for you.
No, it's not cathartic. I think it helps people. No, I think it helps
look at
people.
This seriously.
No, it's not cathartic for me. It helps us all we're all in the sort of a fog of war. Our future looks uncertain for all of us. We have our government in varying degrees rolling out something of a reopening. Everyone agrees it needs to be done slowly and systematically, but exactly how we should be monitoring it and how do we know we're in the right zone? That's the stuff I'm looking at now, so we can feel more comfortable doing this. I'm saying that I think the data is going to turn out better than we think, and I'm taking the position that, based on what Governor Cuomo said this morning, that hand washing and masks may be as good or close to shutdown. So I think that's a helpful thing to be thinking about for all of us. Again, Susan, I'm not seeing the criticisms or the feedback or the.
He came back and said he just thinks you should be careful, which I agree. But we've been very, very careful for a couple of weeks now, so it's good that Drew is using his rational brain and saying what he believes in, because everybody's got their opinion.
Tim, you're trashing Suboxone there. I am not a fan of Suboxone. I'm actually a fan of naltrexone and naltrexone shots. But Suboxone for some people can save lives. So it's really, Suboxone isn't the problem. It's how the doctors deploy it and whether they pick the right patients, and then how they use it and get people off it. So that's, again, it usually falls back to the practitioner, not the medicine. So
Somebody goes, "Who's reading this thread, anyways?"
I mean, other than us,
Yeah, it's funny. She's right.
stuck in an apartment for 50 days can't be healthy.
I know.
Who said that?
I know.
That is sort of commonsensically true.
Ugh.
I think you're absolutely correct like that.
Is it snowing in New York too? I saw in the news that it was snowing. And
I
was
can't
like,
believe that.
I-
It's hot. I went running today and it was 96 degrees. It's nearly
New York
100,
was 63, but it said
100 degrees
it
here.
said it was snowing. I don't see it on the weather. Oh no, it's coming. 55 tomorrow, 48 on Saturday. That's cold for May.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And then snow up in the northern
Mhm.
areas, I think. That's in New
How
York City.
close are we to an effective treatment? There is a New England Journal of Medicine article that came out during our stream, and it is on anecdotal reports on the use of hydroxychloroquine, and it shows it was not. It wasn't clear that it showed any benefit. It did not show any risk. No adverse outcomes in this study. So this business of vilifying it's going to hurt people, clearly wrong. New England Journal, lead article, just out. But they couldn't conclude that it helped people. That makes sense to me. Because you got to remember, 98% of people get well anyway. So you have to have a huge study to document improvement. So we'll see. What causes Bell's palsy? Usually a virus that affects the seventh cranial nerve that
I
comes
had
out.
it.
Susan had it. She didn't have it from a virus. She had it because her blood volume was expanded because of having triplets, and it
Because I was a
choked
cow?
off. It choked off the blood supply to her facial nerve, and the nerve died. And it inflames the nerve, and it swells in the canal here, and then the nerve dies and has to grow back.
Now I have a weak eye.
Mhm.
If you ever wondered.
Yes, Tim, I know. Suboxone is an awful detox. I know. That's what I've always warned people about. So you get strung out on it only with great caution. Remdesivir is mixed, right? It just showed reduced length of hospitalization in mild to moderate cases, not really having much effect on the severe cases. There was also a data that came out today about an HIV medication, that a combination HIV medication that showed no benefit. So there we go. All right, you
Michelle
guys.
didn't get her question answered. 'Cause
What
during
was it?
Baldwin. I don't know. I told her to ask
Michelle
again.
just sat?
She's
I
on-
sat there, Baldwin, and still didn't get my question answered. Well, Michelle, ask what the question was. I didn't see you sitting there.
I know, huh?
Uh,
We can't scroll up that high.
no. If she had the question, she was on hold.
We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have YouTube, and we have questions coming.
Can
at
I
us.
interview Sean Penn? I'd be happy to interview Sean Penn. He's doing great work right now, by the way.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Michelle, I'm looking at the thread to see if you come up here. There you are. If people have been social distancing, is that you? If people have been distancing for 2 months, why are the numbers continuing to rise daily? If the incubation is 2 weeks, should the numbers be down by now?
My question exactly.
The numbers are down in people where they've been taking the social distancing very seriously, like New York City. It's way down. It's places that closed late and may not have been doing such a great job of it that it's sort of late peaking and kind of a sustained peak. I don't quite understand why it's staying up in Connecticut and Massachusetts, except I have something. My sense is it may have something to do with the migration of New Yorkers up that direction, giving them kind of a second wave, of exposure. I don't. So it is going down. I mean, there's almost nowhere it's not going down in some fashion, whether it's cases per day or hospitalization rate or ICU bed use. You got to remember the deaths per day is kind of a challenging marker to read. Yes, we would like to see that down further for sure. What's that?
Somebody got Bell's palsy and he says his nose runs when he eats.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Connecticut and Massachusetts. I don't know. I don't quite know why things got. Did you guys, Michelle? Did they close late or something? It was really looking at their data. I mean, Massachusetts, I would think, would be one of the states that would have gotten on it right away and be in really good shape, but they were not. Looking at it now, their deaths per day are not great. It's sort of plateauing, not going down yet. But again, remember that's a lagging indicator. Your hospital resource use is dropping rapidly. Now, I don't have the updated data on this, but the amount of people getting sick and coming to the hospital is really on the downslope. And that's what you see mostly throughout the country. The U.S. data itself, at least based on these models that I'm reading here right now, is, it's on the downslope for the country in all respects.
Thank God. Okay, I want you to mention what you're doing tomorrow. Kat Timpf and Emily Hampshire are
Emily, okay. So Kat Timpf, she is my friend from the Greg Gutfeld show, is coming in here to talk a little bit about what's going on in New York. And then Emily Hampshire, who is Stevie from Schitt's Creek, if you are a crazy Schitt's Creek fan like I am.
But you're also a huge fan of Gutfeld, just so you know.
I'm a fan
Everybody
of Greg's.
Needs to know.
I'm a fan of Kat's, and I'm a fan of Emily's. And I was on her podcast earlier in the week, yesterday.
Love Emily.
And she will be on tomorrow. We're doing about 3:30.
No, it's starts at 2:30 Pacific time.
2:30.
Also, I want to say President Trump said that, he liked that Greg Gutfeld's ratings were up against, and, pretty much competitive with the other late night shows. And I liked it for you, but just because we like Greg. And boy, did I take a licking.
Yeah, so see?
So wet. I don't care.
Emily Hampshire is hysterical.
Anyway, so Drew was on the Hump Day podcast, and it's still up on youtube.com/The Actors Fund. So if you want to go see that, it was a quick little interview. She was very cute.
Alex, I like that. Biden Pinsky. Wouldn't that be a good ticket? Thank you for that. Baba Booey, yes.
No thanks.
Baba Booey. Ooh.
Oh, my God.
Uh-oh. Mike, any febrile illness is COVID till proven otherwise, though the probability of any febrile illness being COVID is somewhat low. But everyone should be tested that has any symptoms whatsoever. Why isn't Sublicated used more? It is used a bit. It's used quite a bit. Dr. Bruce uses it a lot. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. I will see you tomorrow at 2:30. Is that correct?
And you'll also be on Fox tonight.
Fox 11, which is a local Fox affiliate here in Los Angeles. We are going to be interviewing somebody. We do a lot of local reporting on how the city is starting to open up here. And our county, our friend Catherine Barber, elected to open up the head of the city for her. So tomorrow she's allowing us to see it. I will be on Reasonable Doubt with Adam and Mark Garagos, and we will be streaming at 2:30. And I will also Mind Pump podcast. And again, don't forget Daniel Baldwin's podcast, the Stay Healthy Experience. And I will see you tomorrow at 2:30. Are you one of the millions with a health condition that requires you to use needles? If so, please listen. Disposing of your needles properly is a big responsibility. Accidental needle sticks in the home can injure family members, children, and even your pets. I am Dr. Drew Pinsky, and I have an easy solution for the safe disposal of needles and the end to accidental needle stick injuries. You may have heard about Sand Mini. The Sand Mini is the affordable, foolproof way to dispose of needles. It's FDA approved, and with Sand Mini, it is easy. Just insert the needle, press the button, and in seconds, the needle is incinerated. Now you have a needle that is completely safe to discard. No sharp points, no bacteria, germs, or pathogens. Make sure your home and business is sand safe. Every needle, every time. Go online right now and use our special promo code DREW2020 for our best offer ever on the Sand Mini. That's nomoresharps.com. And remember, use my promo code DREW2020 for our special offer.